Hey, what's up, Brendan? This is a special little teaser episode of Why We Roll with myself, Wythe Marschall, and I'm just jumping in to talk to someone we've spoken to a little bit earlier to set up actually one of our earlier interviews with JD Clement, who wrote Hypermall, which was a really fun interview and game that we'd like to come back to in our mall series that we're going to do at some point, where we talk to Tony Grasso about Blister Critters and get somebody from Slug Blaster, and of course go back to Hypermall Unlimited Violence. In the meantime, we have a new game from Brenden at Hammer City Games, the publisher of Hypermall. So Brenden is here, Brenden Carlson, to tell us about this game, which we might have even mentioned back in that episode. I'd have to double check, but I'm excited is coming to BackerKit really soon. So this is just a little teaser, quick conversation. And before I go any further, Brenden, do you want to introduce yourself and say a little about what you have going on before I ask probing follow-up questions?
Sure, can do. I'm Brendan. I'm the director of Hammer City Games. We're a Canadian games publisher. We're focusing on the weird and the wacky. We don't want to be stuck to just one game. We push ourselves to try and build whatever the hell we want. I guess that's kind of the ethos that we have behind it all. And we're currently working on Young Gods, which is something we're very excited to put out. Something that's required a lot of effort and collaboration. And yeah, we're very excited to get out to people and get more eyes on.
Yeah, cool. No, and I think the idea of taking sort of extremes, like I will say, Hypermall is kind of an extreme game, and this game, although by you and not by someone else, but you're involved with both, right? Also has an edge of like really pushing limits that I think is interesting, given that it also does seem to me, at least on the surface, to be somewhat political and talking about the age in which we live and kind of
Oh,
engaging with.
it's 1000% political. There's not
We love that.
all art is political, and this is the cutting edge of that.
Yeah, because it
Um,
feels like you're telling people like we know the world is shitty. Here's a power fantasy that engages pretty directly with like, what if you could change the world? What would you do? And has some of that edginess that I think was around at different points in sort of RPG creation liveliness. But I'm thinking specifically around like the Matrix and like bringing cyberpunk back to the
oh
fore.
yeah, oh yeah.
I remember discovering Shadowrun at the end of high school, so probably right before The Matrix came out, which dates me. But that I feel like these things come and go in terms of how games kind of sync up, and I'd like to think that we also at Stillfleet Studio have been really focused on this and how do we create narrative structures that are really really fun, but also responsive to things in the world. So Young Gods feels like a game where it's a power fantasy, but it's really looking at kind of the darkness around us and hoping for kind of a new mythological energy to enter onto the scene. So, can you tell us a little about what Young Gods is? Maybe just summarize generally, how it plays. Again, I'll probably ask more about D12s because they are also my favorite cell type. So, I'm definitely going to ask about D12s. But
Absolutely.
yeah, what
Uh,
is the
so
game? Yeah.
it's a game. It wears a lot of hats, but all of them I hope are congruent with each other. It really kind of like I said, it is very political. It is 100%. It's about, yes, the world is shit. But unlike Hypermall, which is kind of like satirizing, Sisyphus has to be happy, that kind of energy. This is very much a game about burning it down. And I mean that in every possible way. It's a game about looking at the awful of the toilet world that we live in. It's also a game about revolutions and their consequences, about the old world and the new, both the good and the bad. It's kind of a comparison between the modern, the postmodern, and the classical, all kind of mixing together. Um, it's sort of like those weird instances where you have someone that was like a Republican back in the '60s that was all like, keep government out of everything, and now they've just come full circle to being like, am I progressive now? It's just this full like weird thing where we're kind of seeing this sort of bring back of the old kind of classic order and how that's seen as a more, I don't want to say progressive, but it is a change, better change in quotations compared to everything we're dealing with now in this sort of, I guess, heat death society we're living in.
Yeah, and it feels it's got a little of that energy of like American Gods or any of the sort of Sandman like Vertigo world of we're in the modern world, but there are great forces moving, and they're moving now for a reason. Like they're always there and they're always doing stuff, but this is an age in which something is capital H going to happen.
Mhm.
So can you tell us a little about the world of the game? Who do you play? Who are the characters in Young Gods?
So the world is very much like ours, but of course that you play as ancient deities. You play as like from whatever mythology you like, whether it's whether it's Greek or Norse or Chinese or anything from the myriad of fascinating African religions or South American religions or even Native American religions. Whatever mythological figures that have made such an impact on these cultures, you can really bring it in. You can embody these entities as they appear once again, or they find a reason to, you know, change things. Things capital H happen, like you said. And it is a world that is the magic is snuffed out. It's a world of like very cold modernity, but it's very clear that on the borders of them there are other worlds that are rich with magic, change, supernatural effects, and you can go to these places. If anything, the game pushes you to, if you're going to take over and change things, you need an army, and you're not going to get one among humans that are enslaved to reality. You got to find something else, and so there's a push to like get out of the like the headspace of like, oh, I'll start a mafia, or I'll start a an underground drug ring. Like these are the things controlled by these new deities that consume and rule reality. Your mission is to go back. Your mission is to find a way to pull in that which is old, that which is supernatural and magical and incongruent with modern reality, and that is your weapon against the of modernity in essence.
Interesting. So it's like it's anti-modern in a sense, which can often be honestly pretty reactionary. But I get the sense that's not the way in which these gods are necessarily going to go, even though they're old gods. If that's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but I'm curious if you could say a little like who. So you're playing a god. I mean, in terms of being a player and having a PC like an avatar, do you have an avatar or do you have multiple people? Is it sort of faction level? Like, can you describe some of the play loops, things players might experience in terms of how similar or different this is from maybe like playing mage, right? The ascension where you're really um, powerful and you can travel time and space and you're kind of different from other mortals because you have magic, but you are in the modern world, right? So I
Yes.
don't know if there's sort of parallels with some of that type of gameplay or if it's pretty different sort of faction level.
So I can definitely answer that. Funny enough, my co-designer, when we were like really getting into the nitty gritty of this, he's like, "This feels very Mage of the Ascension." I'm like, "That's a good thing." I've never played it. I've played Mage of the Awakening. I love it. I love Mage of the Awakening. I've never played the Ascension because it was very obtuse. But the gameplay really begins at like there's like three tiers as I've like outlined in like the narrators, the GM section. With like the first tier is when you're at very low level. There's two power stats, I guess the word is. There's divinity, which is your ability to change the world around you. There's arrow, which is the ability to become who you truly are. And so these start low and you are, scraping by. You are just a dude or a girl or a person who's just dealing with the world around them. And as you are growing this power, you are putting yourself up against greater and greater threats. And the rules reflect this with as you grow more powerful, the things you are doing change. There is some level of, I guess you could say, domain play because there is this stat of having a domain, an area that is yours to claim and rule over that you grow as you start to dismantle this infrastructure that the usurpers, as they're called, have built around them to maintain their power structure. And kind of in regards to your previous point, one of the things that we implemented was a system called drives, like push a god to change the world in a certain way. It's not just like, oh, things were better back then, so we're going to go back to then. That is one of them, but there's also people who want to, who want just a pure straight up revolution. There's people who want to reform things. They think that things could benefit everyone if they were changed. And then there is, of course, the bootlicker drive, where you're like, oh, you know what? I think I could get along with these guys. And then there's the two that are just pure anarchy, which are the one is They want to destroy everything. They want to level cities. They think that the worst mistake we made was getting out of the oceans. And so they're like, let's go back to that. And then there's the other one that thinks that the problem with everything and everything that's happened is the fact that deities are a thing. And their mission is to kill as many as they possibly can and be the only god to make sure that none others show up. And that definitely won't be abused in any way, shape, or form.
So we have sort of different factions that do matter in this world that is similar to our world in a lot of ways, and you can actually change it and become sort of more powerful as you go around. And in terms of the young gods, so you said you're playing as the old gods, but the game is called the young gods. So the young gods are the usurpers. Is that
So
basically
there's distinctions. Some of them are close together, but to be clear, young gods are deities from the ancient world who have died and resurrected and come back time and time again. Every time they die, they wake up in a new body. Freshly born, they have to go through the same rigmarole, and sometime in their life, they will realize this is who I am meant to be, and then they're died, and then they die. They come right back. It's this constant cycle of being trapped in this prison of flesh and watching the world change. There's the nomenclature of old gods. These are the same deities from the same pantheons. The thing is that they've found a dedicated set of worshipers that have been able to feed them enough power to keep them alive and not become mortal over the centuries. So they could be hundreds or thousands of years old only because they just coincidentally have been able to move with the times and have people that still believe in them. And then there is the new gods, who are deities spawned from the modern world. Again, it's very American gods. We did have to put a big disclaimer on page like 10 that we're like, look, we're taking inspiration from the art, however, comma, you know what comes next. But the new gods are indeed like they're the deities of like corporate greed, or the deities of drugs or social media. They gain their power from these. They're not like one-to-one that like, oh, your phone is a god, but it's like there is a commentary about the society we live in that has become a deity that we, whether we know it or not, have worshipped and have given power to. And now they have consolidated this power into this sort of supernatural form called the ziggurat, which is their false mountain, which keeps things controlled under their thumb.
Yeah, I got you. So these different attention loops, these different drives, in classic, psychological terms, are actually feeding different sort of deities, and you're sort of choosing the kind of deity, and whether you're basically being, locked into kind of a this terrible dynamic of like oppressor and sort of person who's submitting to that oppression, or if you're resisting that in some way. And in
Yes.
this case, you're playing the young gods. So there's young gods, new gods, and old gods. So yeah, there's sort of very simple distinctions, but you could imagine playing around with that a lot and coming up with cool ideas for sort of new characters entering the scene. Kind of like in a vampire story or a werewolf story, there might be tropes, types for movies, literature that you draw on, but at the end of the day, it's a simple enough idea to make up your own. So here
Mhm.
we're really playing with what divinity looks like in a modern world, which frankly it's pretty desecularized world, and most of the world that isn't desecularized is pretty into kind of an abstract, Abrahamic, often
Mhm.
monotheistic conception of deity. So I think it's interesting to come back, again, like American Gods or Sandman or whatever, but with your own take on sort of these very personalized deities who are not quite omnipotent in the typical sense, but in some ways they always come back. So you can kill
Yeah.
them, but they're going to come back. So I think that's an interesting way to kind of have a player character in an RPG. So from RPG Land, can you tell us about how conflicts are resolved? What is the sort of system? And we talked a little about before taping, but I'm
Mhm.
excited because I like D12s, and you said tons of D12s. So tell us
Yes.
all about that. How do we roll
So
dice?
we are really positioning and pushing this as a spiritual successor to the now defunct Chronicles of Darkness storyteller system. Me and my friends and the friend of mine who is working with me on building this game, we are huge fans of it. He has collected every single one of those books. He adores them, and he got me into them. And I have to agree, it's a very good system when it comes to like building a narrative and growing your character in a not just if you kill something you get experience way. We wanted to take that, we wanted to make it our own, we wanted to make it more distinct, of course, legally and identified identity like distinct. But we also wanted to incorporate the best God's greatest dice, which is the D12. So it's very similar with like there's characteristics. There's 9 that say like this is physical, mental, social, and then there's 7 skills per category. And then someone wants to do something, I say, all right, do characteristic plus skill or characteristic plus characteristic. You gather that many D12s, you roll them, and 10s, 11s, and 12s are hits. 12s are 2 hits, and of course, there's a myriad of different rules to kind of change the flow of the game. So, like, if you want to bump up, like if you have an expertise, so like if you're good at crafts but welding specifically, then you'll bump it up to 11 up, which means that 11s and 12s give you 2 hits, 10s just give you 1 hit, or if you get to 10 up, then you get 2 hits per success. If it has a second digit, it's a success. That's kind of the shorthand of it. And of course, if you get 5 hits or more, then it's a perfect success. It's a critical. It gives you a positive condition known as a boon that you can use at a later time to make other tests easier or to just make the result of a future test better. And it's meant to be very intuitive, very easy to grasp, and it's meant to take that system that we're spiritually succeeding from and cleaning up a lot of the more ambiguous areas when it comes to like combat or social interaction or crafting or chases or mysteries and stuff like that. So as much as we've taken inspiration, we really wanted to make it our own, and we really wanted to clean things up to make it like the next like step of evolution for like what can you do with this game, or this system.
Interesting. So, kind of a bold proposition to try to get all the fans who like that system to kind of come over to the D12 side, which, again, I'm biased. I like D12s a lot. So it'd be interesting to play through it and get a sense of how it plays comparatively. But definitely, if people are familiar with that system, and it's not hard to learn anyway, that's a good one to check out if you're into somewhat crunchier games. I mean, I always thought as a kid, because I loved Vampire and those games and Mage, etc., that it was kind of medium crunch compared to D&D. So I think it's impacted me in that sense, because I do like being able to have epicyclic rules that get added on that work, but the core system being pretty simple, where you don't really have any confusion in terms of parsing lots of difficulty numbers that get very finicky when you
Yeah.
go up to D20 or D100. So I've never liked D20, D100 compared to the rest of the die types, where you get nice curves that are more fun to sort of GM with. But you can still extend them in all these ways. And obviously, successes has been one way to extend them that worked really well. So I remember that feeling different just reading. I don't think I ever really played Werewolf per se, but that Werewolf had enormous pools of D10s.
Yeah.
Just trying to get a lot of successes, because everyone's like a super heroic badass. It's like a Hulk versus a Hulk in every combat scene.
Yeah.
Whereas
All
I
right,
feel
20
like,
D10s. Let's hope this goes well. Oh no.
yeah, and it's like that felt a little silly. In look, also the art is that classic '90s. Everyone is like a muscle on top of a muscle on top of a muscle.
Leather on top of leather on top
Yeah.
of leather. Yeah, I feel
So
you.
I feel like it is interesting because the art is wild on your backer kit preview page. So there's a lot of very slick looking, pretty erotic looking art. So this game does feel like it's pressing these kind of buttons of emotionality, which does make me think back again to reading Sandman as a kid, in this world where it wasn't really erotic art, but it was pressing the idea that if there's someone named Desire, like how do you represent raw desire in an image? You know what I mean? Like what are the sort of surreal confluences of like limbs and textures and colors that sort of get your mind in that place. So for each god, I imagine they have some sort of domain or something, and the art has to kind of match that. But do you want to say a little about sort of visualizing and how you've thought about graphic design and just bringing this to life beyond like playtesting and coming up with the ideas? But now that you're making the book on BackerKit, what has that process been like? Anyone you want to shout out?
Oh, I mean, the first thing I'll definitely say is that like a lot of the art comes from the fact that mythology is inherently incredibly horny. No one likes talking about that, but it is like everyone is fucking everyone. Just ask Zeus and the fact that he's like, I'm just gonna fuck some people as a swan, and you're like, okay, like this is just a regular thing he does. Mythology is horny, and it's this. We live in a modern world that's sort of like, it feels very hypocritical that we're like, everything is sex. We're always pushing buttons when it comes to like, oh, how horny can we make this image? But nudity is evil. We can't show a we live in this all the time. We're seeing like sex is advertisements, Instagram, fuck, OnlyFans at this point. Yes, that's a god. Don't you worry. But like at the same time, there's like such a vilification of actual, eroticism or even some nudity. And like this isn't meant to be just like, everyone is naked all the time. That's for the special edition. But it's meant to just really kind of push the fact that it's just like, yeah, gods are horny. They always have been. And it's time to like, let's be a little honest with the fact that it is, especially modern, as you said, modern secular monotheistic religions are very, very anti-sexual in a lot of regards, especially in the Western world. And I think people need to just maybe get over it, because people are okay glorifying violence. They're okay glorifying like 6,000 war movies where you see a guy die because his neck got shot out. But no one wants to be like, oh, a sex scene. How scandalous, So we're just like, you know what? Fuck you. We can push it a bit. We can show that like this isn't something to be afraid of. But if I wanted to shout out anyone, I've worked with a lot of fantastic artists. All of them have been very excited for the project. All of them have been they've been very forthcoming with like, being budget friendly and everything. I do have to shout out the one artist though. Is that okay? Because he is a Rule 34 artist, so I don't want to get in trouble with you or anyone else.
I mean, it's the artist making the art for the game. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to just shout out the artist, and we can we don't have a lot of time left anyway. So I think shouting out an artist is a good way to use some time. But
his tag is Mr. 69M, and he lives in Kazakhstan, and he has been so pumped to work on this project. He's doing the big like at the beginning of every chapter splash arts. And he's just been a dream to work with because I've just been like, hey, ideas. And he gives me a sketch and I'm like, how did you put this together? Like it blows my mind the quality he brings to every single piece. It's phenomenal. He did the cover art. And the moment I did the cover art, I'm like, we're making this game like 100%.
well, very cool, Mr. 69M. Yeah, I'm not familiar with his work, but it's great to work with artists of different kinds. And again, this is I think it's important to be able to explore different social realms at the table and create safe spaces and interesting ways to do that. So I think it's pretty fitting to kind of dissect as you're trying to do like what are these drives that we kind of just sort of are tune out every day, but they are all around us, as you said, like violence on TV, sex and advertising, and then they're banned from itch. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Oh God, don't even get me started.
So you can talk about in your game like beheading goblins all day, but you can't have like a realistic like sex scene, right? So I think that is interesting as an approach. We've not really spent a lot of time in this podcast, and this teaser is probably not the place to do it, but it'd be interesting to talk to Chris and prepare an episode where we really thoughtfully discuss like not safe for work kind of content in RPGs. It just hasn't been like the focus, but I do think there's something there, right, with kind of challenging folks. And again, I mean, I imagine maybe you could say a little about how the game kind of invites players to do this in a way that is not going to feel weird right at the table.
Yeah, so we actually had a really big section that I wrote in the narrator's guide, like the chapter that talks about like how to run the game, specifically talking about like how to approach sexuality in a mature way. Of course, one of the biggest things we said is like it's always like safety rules like X card lines and veils, being respectful of people's like tolerances of these sorts of things, but also we wanted to make sure that it didn't, and I think I specifically write this in there, that we don't want it to devolve into a middle school giggle fest, like we want to approach it with some sort of like respect without just, making it the punchline of every single joke. Again, what I wrote is probably much better than what I can say, but we really wanted to kind of show how like sexuality and eroticism is crucial to mythologies and how they're told. The gods are reflections of ourselves, and we have always been spiritually interested in the beyond, and we've also always been horny. So that is why we built gods and stories like that. And so it's about injecting, it's respectfully injecting the eroticism in gameplay without being like, I don't need to say anything to, get your mind to be like, ah, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, we I mean, that's actually one of the kind of the main ways to gain worship when you're very low level early in the game is it's called direct worship, and it's either done via sex or fighting, and like it is engaging an immortal, and it is pulling worship directly from them. Of course there are times that it unfortunately can end badly for them if you're doing like a sparring match and you punch them so hard their heart stops. Yeah, you get your worship, but uh-oh, he's not doing so well. So that it is a major piece of gameplay, which of course we have been very thorough when it comes to like, this is something that exists. Don't, please, for the love of God, don't roll constitution checks, you know?
Well, yeah, I've not played the game, so I can't comment on the use of sort of checks and saves and whatever, how that is built in or not built into the sort of D12 system. But it sounds like you've approached thoughtfully the whole concept. So I imagine the way the GM is supposed to sort of help, or the players in general, including the GM, are supposed to sort of modulate like interactions with the world and levels of danger is simply and thoughtfully explained. I'm curious to see sort of the reaction to the system for one, and the world of game for the other, both of which seem interesting. Brenden, I think we're running up on time. Is there anything else you wanted to shout out? I think the key points that I want to make sure we don't lose track of are this is a backer kit project going live April 14th. And
April 14th, yes.
Yeah, April 14th. And Hammer City is an indie publisher out of Canada, publishing sort of really interesting, provocative stuff, often with this like kind of political bent. So we're curious to see how Young Gods does and what the response is from the community, especially since you are kind of trying to speak to people who are engaged in these mythological games using a similar but different system, and asking them to kind of give you a chance and pull them over. So I'm curious how that works in terms of the evolution of the whole industry, right? So beyond letting folks know it's available on April 14th on BackerKit, the game is Young Gods. Anything else you wanted to say or shout out before we close out the teaser for today?
What I can definitely say is I had a fan who's a huge fan. He loves the game. Said that this game is very much like K-pop Demon Hunters in that that movie is for people that can get past the title, and this game is definitely for someone who can get past the cover. Um, some people might not be able. It's not everyone's cup of tea. That's 100%, fair. Absolutely, that's respectful. And we're hoping to make more games with this system to make it more accessible. But I highly recommend giving it a chance. And if you also enjoy the art, whether visually or other means, please, engage with it as best you can. And we're very excited to get support for this and see it on shelves. In all honesty.
Cool. Yeah, it's an interesting way to design a product, almost like are you cool enough for this? So we'll see. I guess April 14th is going to go live, and I don't know when this episode will come out, but this is just again a short teaser. And of course, everyone should check out the backer kit. And Hammer City is doing lots of weird, interesting, fun things. So, Brenden, thanks so much for sharing your time. I'm sure we'll chat again. And best of luck. Yeah, until then, this is just a little quick amuse bouche from Why We Roll. We're back Sunday with regular episodes. Thanks, Brendan.
Thank
And
you.
thanks to anybody listening in the past, present, or future. Closing out the stream.